We are live.
Great, thanks, Katie. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Maggie Ullman, and I want to welcome you to our October 21st, 2025 Planning, Economic Development, and Environment Committee meeting of Asheville's City Council. This is a remote meeting, and we're all participating virtually. I'll be reading each agenda item as we go so that anyone following along can kind of follow along that way. We are live streaming on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. And for today's meeting, we have the option for folks to call in and comment live during the meeting. So if you'd like to do that, use the number 855-925-2801 with meeting code 8187. First, you'll be muted, then you'll hear the meeting live in your phone. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. So anybody out there, welcome. And we have a really packed and exciting agenda for today. I will introduce my fellow councilwomen and then we'll jump into the agenda. So Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Councilwoman Kim Roney.
Good afternoon.
Great. And as I mentioned, when we get to different agenda items, staff, if you could please introduce yourself, or we have some guests as well. So great for guests to introduce themselves as we start moving along. So as we jump in, we have 7 items on the agenda. So again, a full agenda today. The first item is to approve the minutes from our September 16th meeting. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Great. And I'll do a roll call vote, as is our practice on virtual calls. Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
Councilwoman Roney.
Aye.
Myself, aye. The meeting minutes are approved. All right, so next we're going to move on to our second agenda item, which is a quarterly data update on the economy. Something we're trying new in this committee is to really just kind of have a rhythm of data reports and updates so that we can be kind of tracking some metrics across the breadth of our work. As the title of the committee suggests, we talk about a lot of stuff from planning, economic development, and environment. So we'll be hitting different quarterly updates for different topics. And we're starting now with the economy. A future one will be on environment, et cetera. And so Rachel Taylor, our Economic Development Division Manager, and some other staff are going to be providing this update to us now. So take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, my name is Rachel Taylor. I'm the Economic Development Division Manager, and I'm here today to present your economic update along with Chris Corral, Director of Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities. Next slide. So today's update, as I mentioned, will be on economic indicators and events. So our key takeaways are that unemployment, though it remains above pre-storm levels, it has continued to drop from a post-Helene high of nearly 13%. The leisure and hospitality sector saw the largest contraction of employment. We continue to track business impacts and recovery through tools like business impact surveys. Our minority and women-owned business enterprises, or MWBE, participation through city contracting is currently on par with prior years. Hotel and vacation rental occupancy demand and revenues are down, and use of event facilities and spaces is increasing. Next slide. So as we mentioned, this is one of 4 topic areas for quarterly updates. Today we'll focus on economic indicators, the economic impacts of events and tourism, and we do have a note for workforce development and jobs pipelines. However, we'll be joined by Nathan Ramsey next month, and he'll be able to give a really in-depth look at workforce development. So we're not going to touch on that today, but Nathan will join us next month. Next slide. So as folks will see and can tune in, we'll come to you, staff will come to you over the next year to present on economic development, development and permitting, transit and parking, as well as sustainability and resilience. So we'll be able to showcase data from each of those categories throughout the year. Next slide. So to get us started, we're going to talk about a couple of economic indicators, and I just want to highlight Riverbird Research. They are our partners housed under the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce, along with the Economic Development Coalition. They really are key partners in economic data and research. So they issue out monthly economic indicator reports, which can be found on their website. So as of August 2025, unemployment was 4.3%. This is 1 point higher from this time last year, which was 3.3%. So we're really glad to see that a little bit more in line. As I mentioned, the unemployment rate has continued to drop from the high of nearly 13% after the storm. Construction saw the largest increase in employment year over year, while leisure and hospitality saw the largest contraction of employment. As you can see in this chart, this is the major industry employment distribution. So the largest categories are health, services, and education at 20%, followed by leisure and hospitality at 14%, then retail, trade, and government at 12%, and then professional and business services at 11%. Next slide. For the Asheville Business Inclusion Office, I wanted to first thank our friends in IT for building us a better kind of internal mechanism to pull data. So I went pretty far back on the fiscal years just because we haven't had a consistent way to kind of pull that data in the last several years. So the city, our ABI policy does not apply to state and federally funded projects. So these numbers are really reflecting our spend through city services and city contracts. The top industries include construction and related services, sanitation, maintenance, consulting, and other services. So for fiscal year 26, we've contracted with 19 MWBE vendors across over 100 invoices for a spend of about $280,000. So as I mentioned, we're going to keep an eye on this, but we do seem to be on par with spend across the prior fiscal years, excuse me. And even though the ABI policy does not apply to state and federally funded projects, our ABI office and Marcus Kirkman, our ABI manager, has continued to support small minority and women-owned business enterprises seeking to participate in recovery contracting opportunities through technical assistance, consulting, and general sharing of opportunities and training opportunities. So we've been really excited with that participation and really look forward to continued recovery work and opportunities for our local businesses to plug into those opportunities. Next slide. Another way that we're tracking business recovery and economic impact is through something called a business health survey, business impact survey. We partnered with Riverbird Research and many others to issue out the first business impact survey about 6 months after the storm. So in spring of 2025, Riverbird issued out this survey that covered about 15 counties. We were able to receive over 1,100 responses to that survey. Most of the respondents were small businesses with fewer than 25 employees. And that reflects the general makeup of our regional economy and really underscores the importance of that targeted, flexible recovery support. 70% of those respondents reported that they were not located in flood zones, but were still impacted by damage to infrastructure, such as road closures, outages, and debris, which created additional barriers to operations. And that really indicates the importance of broader exposure and evolving technical assistance and risk in future business planning. So we heard loud and clear the need for financial support, and there's also a need for that business planning support as well. For the Asheville specific response data, we received 486 completed responses. 42% of the respondents experienced physical damage costs below $150,000, while 14 indicated they had physical damage costs above $150,000 or more. 55% estimated that their revenue projections would decrease by 50% or less, while 38% estimated that their revenue projections would decrease by more than 50%. 62% of the respondents indicated that their staffing levels post-Helene decreased, and that was either through the number of employees that they were able to keep on or the number of hours they were able to offer their employees. And then across the 15-county region, all respondents indicated that financial support and increased customer demand were the top two most urgent needs to stabilize and recover from Helene. Next slide. So I wanted to kind of highlight those results. The second business impact survey is currently live. This will reflect the needs and the impact 1 year post-storm. So at the time that we put this slide together, we had 154 completed responses. Please encourage business owners that you know, folks that you know, to share the survey out. The survey is open until the end of the month. As of the 17th, we had 254 completed responses. So we're really looking to get as many as we can within that time frame. We do expect that number to be lower than the number of responses we had in the first one. As I mentioned, Nathan Ramsey will present to you all in November about workforce development, so you can look forward to a deeper dive on that next month. And with that, I will pass it over to Chris Coral. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. Chris Coral, Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities Director for the city. I'm here to talk a little bit about air, lodging, and event information year to date. So the data on this slide is the most recent provided by Explore Asheville. There'll be a next update at their board meeting at the end of this month. But what you can see is a general trend that hotel and vacation rental property occupancy demand and average daily rate remain below pre-Helene levels. However, a bright spot is Explore Asheville's group sales team has booked more group business this year than any previous year. So demand is returning, but slowly, and is going to need continued investment to help ensure success. But Dick and team are doing a great job trying to get that word out. But highlights, airport passengers are down 8%, total lodging sales down 20%, and average daily rate down 11%. Next slide, please. So City of Asheville event facilities year to year, we're tracking Aston, Unigolf, the Nature Center, and outdoor special events. We specifically excluded JVL soccer since it's completely closed right now, but Aston Park's attendance is up 6%, but total revenue down 19%, which is specifically due to the change in status for our main event, which is the Asheville Open every year. We dropped from a level 2 event to a level 3 event due to challenges with the facilities courts. We didn't meet the standard any longer. But we have been able to increase youth programs with partnerships with Asheville Tennis Association, which has been really great. Unigolf is down across the board as well, mostly because we have half of a golf course right now. So we have less time for play to occur, which affects how many starts we have. We did open Uni Disc Golf, which has been doing really well. It's 350 starts weekly with players, which is a great little added bonus. And we've increased the youth programs because we now have an entire front nine space available to do more youth programmings where we didn't have the space before while regular golf was playing. Nature Center is relatively flat for attendance. Total revenues down year to date, but that's really just to a change in the schedule of the programming. A lot of stuff that was in the late summer, early fall last year is now late fall, early spring this fiscal year. So that should catch up. And attendance is up without the revenue catching as well, just because we've had an increase in member visits and a decrease in just like the daily paid visits, which we attribute to the challenge to get to and from the Nature Center with the bridge currently being out. Youth programs are also down, but that ties back to those ancillary events that are typically in the late summer, early fall that have just shifted time frames. So that should also catch up. Outdoor special events, the total number of events are down 19%, but attendance is up 16. So what we're seeing there is that the total events are down, but events that are happening are getting a greater participation rate from attendees. And they're slightly bigger, even though there are less of them. Next slide, please. Harris Cherokee Center, Asheville. we're up pretty well across the board here. Attendance is up 83% first quarter to first quarter. Usage is up 9%. Total revenue is up 41%, and our expenses are actually down 6%. And our estimated economic impact first quarter to first quarter is up 42%. This is really just highlighted in the fact that we had 3 sold out shows with Widespread Panic in July and 4 sold out shows with Leanne Morgan in August, all 7 of those shows being in the arena. And being multi-day events really helps as well as far as that economic impact goes. Next slide. And to wrap everything up with key takeaways, like Rachel mentioned at the beginning, unemployment's remaining above pre-storm levels, but it continues to drop from the post-Helene high. Leisure hospitality sector really seeing the largest contraction of employment. We continue to track business impacts and recovery through tools like impact surveys. Our MWBE participation is currently on par with prior years, and hotel and vacation rental occupancy is down while use of the event facilities and spaces seems to be increasing. And with that, Rachel and I could take any questions.
Thanks, y'all. I see Kim has a hand up. I'm going to jump in. I have some questions too. One, it's just so helpful to see the big picture and to be able to track this over time. And some of the data was kind of a deep dive from the hospitality sector and leisure sector. My question is, do we have, like, I know that the TDA is a pretty established large organization, and so they do a lot with tracking data. But when we looked at the pie chart of all the sectors, it's definitely one of the largest, but it's not the largest. Do we have similar data snapshots on some of the other big pieces of the pie? Or is the reason we're showing hospitality in this update just because that's the readily available data? So for example, I think the health services and education was a larger piece of the pie. Do we have any community partners that can provide us insights and trends in that sector as well?
I can reach out and get some more in-depth information too. And knowing that we want to focus a little bit more on those top employment sectors, I can dive into that and follow up with you all on that information.
Great. And, you know, similar to this whole quest of these quarterly reports, we don't want to make it a whole new job to do reporting, right? We want you to stay doing your work. But my guess is the reason we saw so much in this report on that one sector is because it's more readily available. And I want to make sure that we're showing a balance because that's not the only sector we care about. There's a lot of other that are important. Kim, over to you.
Okay, so starting with the data on employment, I was reviewing the data that's available for Asheville and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And considering what we heard here today, that 62%, if I'm reading that right, of Asheville's businesses in that survey are self-reporting decreased staffing levels. So along with that, where's our partner that tracks workers leaving the city or region? Because it does seem like that's what I'm hearing the most about is businesses are ready to open or ready to expand. They don't have the workers because they left. And then alongside that, what is the impact on unemployment? So unemployment may be down because people are leaving.
I'll have to follow up on the out-migration and impact on employment. The numbers that we have right now are reflective of unemployment, but I can't speak to the connection between unemployment and out-migration at this time.
Okay, I imagine there's probably some Venn diagram overlapping with housing as well. So maybe that's a good question for our partner at Land of Sky, but I thought I would go ahead and lift it up now before Nathan comes to us next time. The second was going back to what Chris presented, and I was thinking about ways that our staff have been super creative in using our existing facilities, like the disc golf. Brilliant way to use an existing facility that's not ready for its original purpose. But recently I was talking to a group of parents about where their kids could, get their energy out after school. And because so many of the parks aren't opened or are damaged, the nature center seemed like the obvious place, except for the hours they don't allow new entrants after 3:30. So it did make me wonder, in the winter time, there's less sunlight. But as we're going into spring, has there been a conversation about extending the hours of the nature center so we can get more folks in there?
We haven't had that specific conversation, but we've been working with the Friends of the Nature Center to expand event programming. The Gateway to the Southern Appalachians project is closing up. It's essentially finished at this point, which will allow for a lot more evening events that are managed by the Friends. We can certainly have that conversation and really explore it and see if it makes sense to shift hours. It's based heavily on other zoos and aquariums around the country and how their hours are structured, but doesn't mean that we can't look at it and see what makes sense.
What I was hearing is that folks couldn't get across town in time after they got their kids out of school. And then because of the unique um, solutions to entrance and parking that they just couldn't get there in time. And they would love to go to the nature center because it's available. So that's one. A second one is, if folks hadn't noticed yet, we're bringing back the very popular skate night at the Civic Center on Saturday, November 8th. There's a family skate from 2:30 to 5:30 and adult skate from 6:30 to 8:30. That was so popular, and I got to participate last December. If I remember right, there were something like 1,300 participants. So because that's super popular, but then it also has an economic impact on bringing folks downtown. It's family friendly, free, affordable. That we were hoping there would be some more events like that throughout the year. And it seems like it almost took a year. So I imagine it's because of a staff capacity issue, but is there a reason that we can't do more events? Like, what would it take?
Well, we actually had targeted doing 3 total skate nights, but because that event costs money as opposed to there's no revenue associated with that event, we wait until we're roughly 60-90 days out to announce it in case we're able to book a fee paying event on top of it. And that happened the 2 quarters prior. So this one was the first time that we didn't have a competing event looking at the same date.
Okay, cool. That really helps. Because I expect it will be busy again.
I sure hope so. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sage?
I'm sorry, I've got to make some lunch with these all day meetings, but question. So we've got Maggie, I really appreciate what you said about the different sectors, and really we do have readily available data on lodging and stuff. Even the STAR reports are amazing. So housing's always been behind in that. But because all our previous housing meeting people are also on here, I want to just make a comment. I'm wondering if we know that short-term rentals are down, hotels are down, are we able to correlate anything to housing vacancy yet, or even voucher housing or unhoused folks moving into housing? And I say that because anecdotally, I ran into Homeward Bound loading up a bunch of furniture from a thrift store that they were personally shopping at because, quote unquote, they were having so many move-ins. They were really excited about it. But I'm just wondering, as we look at this data, are there any correlations across the different housing versus visitors that we can make? So it'd be a great time to kind of capture some of them.
I hear that. I acknowledge that. So I can certainly follow up on that and take a look at that.
Thank you. It's really just curious. I don't feel like we get this opportunity very often to kind of study what happens when there's a lull in visitation or direct impact to short-term rentals. Has me wondering. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for pulling this together and helping us kind of see the big picture. I think, especially as we get into these cycles annually of doing our strategic planning and as the recovery boards are starting, it's just nice to have the data as the backdrop and have time in these committee meetings to not just be looking at the amazing project and program level work, but at kind of the system level information. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, let's keep rolling with our busy, fun agenda. The next item, the long awaited and super exciting Small Business Support Grant Program. I believe Jane Shelton will be here, and Elma King, who is our new CDBG DR Program Manager. Welcome, Elma. I think this is your first committee meeting with us, but I'll pass it off to y'all for this third agenda item.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Hi, everybody. James Shelton, Community Development Division Manager, joined today by Elma King, our new CDBG DR Program Manager. We'll be talking today to give you guys an update about the Small Business Support Program. Next slide, Katie. So the CDBG DR Action Plan describes how the city will use our $225 million DR funding to address Helene-related needs. Within that action plan, we allocated and council approved and HUD approved a $17 million small business support program. And that will be one of the first ones to launch based upon community feedback we heard during our action planning process was to prioritize this in the near term. Other programs will come later, but this is one that we are pushing to roll out sooner rather than later. The implementation of this is based on a robust community engagement process that we undertook as part of the action plan development, as well as more recently, the city in partnership with the Asheville Chamber and Go Local. We hosted some listening sessions with small business support organizations, and we developed some key points that have further informed the implementation of this program. We've refined it based on that feedback to include grants and technical assistance, where previously we had proposed and we may in the future make available loans or some type of debt program or architectural engineering support. We are recommending to move forward with grants and technical assistance alone at this time. We're recommending performance-based grants over forgivable loans after receiving that feedback from the business community. The maximum project award with this program is currently set at $10 million in our action plan, and we anticipate releasing a subrecipient notice of financial opportunity later this month. Technical assistance will be available to potential subrecipients throughout the application window after that NOFO is released. And we'll be back here to this committee for action to recommend subrecipients in January prior to council vote. Next slide. So let's do a quick overview, remind ourselves what this program is. Next slide. So within our CDBG DR action plan, we allocated $52 million toward economic revitalization activities. That's one of the three major areas within our action plan, with infrastructure obviously being the largest with $125 million and housing next at 31. Based upon the unmet needs assessment that we performed this spring, these are the figures that we proposed and were approved for funding economic revitalization with $52 million out of our 225. Next. Within the economic and revitalization bucket, there are three programs, of which the Small Business Support Program is one. We are moving forward with that one before the other two. The other two, of course, are the Flooded Commercial Districts Program that will provide for site development and improvements, flood proofing, arts and cultural support, and equipment investments for business growth in our flooded commercial districts, as well as a $5 million program for workforce development that's intended to address the need for skilled labor and specialized training that's going to help benefit the city's recovery and rebuilding efforts in the long term. Next slide. So the purpose of the Small Business Support Program is to restore and revitalize Asheville's small business sector, which serves as a foundational pillar of our local economy. The program goals are to promote economic stabilization and continuity for impacted small businesses, to prioritize job creation and retention activities that benefit LMI persons, that's low to moderate income. Remember that throughout our CDBG DR program, we must invest 70% of our funds to the benefit of low to moderate income persons. So that's where this goal comes in. We will also look to leverage local partnerships to extend the reach. So that's going to look like how we're going to be strategic with any potential partner that we bring with us to implement this program. Next slide. So the delivery model is that the city will not ourselves fund small businesses directly. This program will be administered by subrecipients, or what we call partners, through a competitive notice of funding opportunity. The minimum award for potential subrecipients is $250,000. The maximum award for potential subrecipients is $10 million. Next slide. So how does money actually get into the hands of the community? Well, we've already gone through steps 1 and 2 here, where the federal government has appropriated funds. We've received authority for those funds here at the city. Just as a reminder, we never actually get $225 million deposited into a City of Asheville bank account. We have grant authority to draw on that account from the U.S. Treasury, but we never receive that money. So we implement programs and then we draw on that as we roll programs out. So that's where we are now, is seeking subrecipient partners, this step 3, which look like 501c3 nonprofits. They can also be other local public agencies, or can be accredited public or nonprofit universities, community colleges, or technical institutions. And they will administer this small business support program on our behalf. They will then further the technical assistance support and business grant funding to businesses themselves. So businesses, let's define what those are. They are privately owned for-profit enterprises that meet the SBA, that's the Small Business Administration, size standards for its primary industry as defined by the applicable NAICS codes. I know a lot of things, but I don't know what NAICS stands for. It's just the code that a particular business falls in within its industry to define the revenue thresholds and employee size thresholds for defining it as a small business. The business must maintain a principal place of business within the city limits of Asheville and be independently owned and operated, and is not dominant in its field of operation on a national basis. Next question. Next slide. Not question. So our action plan, which was informed by the city's unmet needs assessment, also our recovery priority survey that was rolled out, as well as what Rachel mentioned a little bit ago, the WNC Business Impact Survey. We developed this to be a broad stroke what we may do with our CDBG-DR funding. And that further informs our program manual for this, which is, hey, now live on AshevilleRecovers.org. Our community can go there and find the program manual for the small business support program and really get into the weedy details about how we are going to be implementing this. But it's a practical operational tool for us that lays out the procedures for how we're going to implement this program. That further informs the notice of funding opportunity that specifies the particular activities that we intend to fund via that notice. And it offers a tangible application opportunity for subrecipients to come and implement the program with us. So that NOFO, it's rolling out later this month, and will be informed. It's informed by sessions with those small business support organizations that we had back in August and September. So that's where you're going to see us not noticing funding opportunities for a loan type program, but funding opportunity for a grant and technical assistance application. Next. So let's talk about timeline. First, let's talk about where have we been? Boy, has it been a year. So we went through an extensive action planning process this spring, where we came to council on April 8th, where City Council approved our action plan and we submitted that to HUD. And in May, HUD approved that plan and we kicked off our next phase, which was developing the policies, procedures, and program manuals that inform how we go about implementing these programs, and small business support program being one of them. We have finalized, as I mentioned, the small business support program manual, and that's online now. Also, since August, we got our grant agreement executed, which means we have our full grant authority. As I mentioned, we don't ever get a deposit of $225 million. We just have grant authority, but we have a fully executed grant agreement now. We also onboarded Elma, major milestone. She was our first ever CDBG-DR hire. We are right now looking to hire 3 more people to be on her team. We actually have our first interview this week, so we're super excited to bring on more staff capacity to do this work. And then in September, we've been working to finalize and post our program manuals and holding those further stakeholder engagement activities. Next slide. So where do we go from here? We have brought on our implementing partner a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. City Council authorized us to execute a contract with Tetra Tech Incorporated. They are a disaster recovery consulting firm who are helping us to roll this program out, and they're helping us develop that NOFO right now. So we're here with you guys right now as part of that, giving you guys a little bit of information about where we are and what that NOFO may look like. We anticipate the NOFO period to kick off in November with an applicant pre-proposal and conference and technical assistance being provided. And then the city will start doing eligibility review and an evaluation process along with that. We'll do a competitive selection process as well, and we'll begin program development with our recommended subrecipients later in the next couple of months in December. In January, we do anticipate coming back to this committee with a recommendation of a slate of subrecipients for us to move forward with, as well as a request for council consent to approve those subrecipient agreements. We'll then be providing technical assistance for developing their own subrecipient project manuals. They have to, as part of HUD's requirements, develop their own project manuals for how they'll implement the program. We'll finish all the completion of award contingencies, execute those agreements, and once everything looks great for them to start rolling the program out, we'll provide them with a notice to proceed, which gets us to project launch, and they'll start the approved activities in compliance with federal and state requirements. The dark blue square here, it's out here toward the end, but I want to highlight that we'll be engaging with the Recovery Board for information sharing and advocacy throughout this program. So we do anticipate doing that before March, but that's just listed there at the end as a reminder that throughout this process, we do anticipate engaging with the Recovery Board so that we can have their input and reaction and get their feedback on how this program can be best implemented. And that gets us to small business grant and TA opportunities coming this spring and summer that'll become available through subrecipient partners. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about that stakeholder feedback that we got back in August and September. Next slide. One of the key things we heard was speed is important at this time, as well as a streamlined application process, simplified eligibility, and subrecipients who can deliver equitable and efficient support. So we're definitely looking for potential subrecipients who can leverage partnerships. There is a $10 million cap on awards, and we'll evaluate the need for a second NOFO in the future or an amendment to increase the award cap as appropriate. The city will also ensure that all subrecipient programs are coordinated as part of a single cohesive recovery effort. We want to make any program that gets launched in our community as not as confusing as possible. We want to make sure that it's a clear process for our business community to receive the technical assistance and grant support. And we'll have the application information available on AshevilleRecovers.org. We also heard in our stakeholder engagement that forgivable models is critical for recovery. So while our program manual for this program still allows for the potential for forgivable loans, the NOFO that we intend to issue will be performance-based grants and technical assistance. So there's no debt instrument that we're going to be noticing in this first bit. We also heard that defining and integrating resilience and mitigation goals are required to document how their work is supporting those goals. So resilience and mitigation is a key focus area for our technical assistance aspect of this program. So that's going to look at supporting businesses to develop continuity and financial planning, and making sure that they're able to adapt and be more resilient to future disaster-like events. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about program administration and upcoming NOFO. Next slide. So we'll solicit potential subrecipient applications with a 30-day application window. The NOFO will be for citywide service, or it could be tailored to target a geographic or sectoral need. We'll schedule a pre-proposal conference for applicants, and we'll also deliver ongoing technical assistance throughout that application window. The NOFO contents that we'll be requiring will include the definitions of eligible activities, funding limits, timelines, required documentation, and evaluation information. Basically, here's what we need to hear from you, and here's how we're going to evaluate your proposal and make decisions. We'll use a standardized evaluation rubric for competitive scoring. Applicants will be scored on alignment with recovery goals, community impact, readiness, and leveraging of resources. Threshold requirements include organizational capacity and financial stability, program delivery experience, and CDBG-DR compliance readiness. Award recommendations will be made contingent on eligibility, environmental review, and duplication of benefit clearance. DOB is a fun new term for us in federal recovery. Basically means that no federal dollars can be used to recover the same disaster loss. Next slide. So let's talk about what's next. I've kind of talked a little bit about that, but we want this NOFO to go out by the end of this month. We'll be hosting a pre-proposal conference and offer technical assistance to all potential subrecipients to ensure awareness of federal regulations and requirements. We'll conduct an eligibility review of proposals and evaluate applications. Following the competitive selection process and prior to a contingent award, we'll be back here to this committee for action to recommend subrecipients prior to a council vote. We will also conduct recovery board engagement throughout implementation for information sharing and advocacy. Next slide. I made it. We're back to key takeaways. I can summarize this and just say that we're excited to move forward with this program. We obviously understand that recovery is needed now, and we're excited to move forward with getting this program activated for our community. So I'll be happy to take any questions from this committee. Councilwoman Roney, thank you.
Thank you as always, James, and welcome Elma to the team. Instead of lifting up my own concerns, I'm just going to lift up what I'm hearing from impacted community. What would it take to move this timeline any faster? What are the barriers or the decision points? Is it a state issue? Is it federal issue? Is our pursuing an opportunity for grants instead of forgivable loans adding to the timeline, or would it be the same?
In pursuit of grants, I don't believe it's adding to. I think, in fact, grants may actually be cutting into it because it doesn't require a subrecipient to undertake an underwriting, a significant underwriting process. Typically, when you do a loan, you want to ensure that you're going to get your money back at some point, even if it's a forgivable type of loan that's structured that way. So this does reduce the administrative burden and time. Being a grants program, that cuts off some of that time that would be required to underwrite any type of loan assistance. And I understand the need to move as quickly as possible. There's a lot of steps to ensure that we're following all federal requirements. And that does involve a competitive selection process, and also coming back to this committee and council to get full community and as well as elected buy-in with our proposed slate of subrecipients who will implement that program. But I take that, that comment to heart around wanting to move as quickly as we can, and we're giving this every energy and attention that we can.
I appreciate that. I think what I'm hearing the most is that next spring and summer is too late. The other thing that I'm hearing is, let's say we were ready to draw down the funds today. We were going to put $5 million on the ground today to help folks get through the winter. Would the government shutdown have an impact on that?
That's a really good question. Our understanding is that it does not impact that. We have actually already been able to draw on our grant during the shutdown. So we're currently able to draw on our administrative dollars because those are already obligated. What gets tricky is that we have not obligated any funds toward this program to any specific subrecipient. So that's the tricky part that I'm a little bit unsure of during the shutdown, is that we don't have any funds that are technically obligated to a specific entity or program at this point. Right now, we do have the ability to draw on our grant, and we've already done that in the last week or so. We got paid for some administrative costs that we've incurred. However, I don't believe that we would be able to further obligate funds to a program at this point. Today, if I wanted to obligate $5 million and get it out the door, I don't believe I would be able to do that because of the current government shutdown.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on or to echo what Kim's sharing, the speed is such a demand from the community. And, I've talked with you, James, and several others of just like, what can we do? And when you highlight all the steps that are legally required for federal money, the due diligence, like, I know that you're not slacking on the timeline. I know that we're going as quick as possible. And it's just kind of a further indication of how I'm super glad we're getting federal money, but there's a lot of federal reform that we need in order for this to actually support communities that have experienced this. And advocating at the federal level is so important because we're going to miss a whole season, and it's our hardest season for our business community. So I'm just very grateful that you all are working as quickly as you can. You have not stopped to take a break or a breath. I'm glad you're bringing on additional capacity to help you. And I just, I'm just very excited for when this money does get to the community, but to really just encourage all of us to really advocate for full reform at the HUD and FEMA level, because the amount of time it takes hurts. It hurts us. The other thing I'd want to lift up, and we've talked about this as well, is the $10 million cap has some question marks for me. I think that staff strategy to not give these awards out directly and have a partner is brilliant and the right way to go. But I don't know how many community partners we have out there that are going to have the experience necessary to walk through the red tape that HUD is going to require in order for them to become a community partner. So it would just be such a terrible outcome that we wouldn't be able to get all 17 out in this first wave because we don't have enough partners. I hope we do. I'm not sure. I'll be very eager, and maybe staff could share after you have your informational meeting how many partners are there, and if you're seeing any concern about that cap based on the interest in the community. My understanding is if we wanted to change a requirement like that to ensure the community gets the money as quickly as possible, that council would have to take an action, and then there's a 30-day review. So I'm not at a point of advocating that we pause this to make that change now. But I would just ask of send up the flag as soon as you can if you're feeling nervous about our ability to spend this all at once. I do not want to do multiple waves. I do not want to see a wave hitting the community in next fall. I'm eager for it to get all out at once. So that is one thought, the $10 million cap. The second thought is in the review criteria, I would love to see collaboration as much as possible across the sub-partners, because I know from the existing business grants that have gone out, it's kind of confusing, right? If you're a business owner, first of all, you're trying to survive and you're trying to make sure that your employees can still get paid. And then you're like, wait, who has a program? What's their criteria? How much do I do it? And the fact that there's this range of grant applications is confusing. And so if there's ability for us to incentivize or reward different applicants who are like, we're going to have a back of the house application, or we're going to have an overlapping brand, or whatever collaboration looks like, so that there's kind of a one-stop shop or something as easy as possible for businesses. I think that is something I really encourage us to look for in our partners, so that it's as streamlined and easy as possible for community members to access. I think Sage had a hand up, and then Kim also did.
Thanks. So is this the only pool of money that businesses are getting? I mean, what's happening out there that I'm not aware of? Anything? Are we missing any opportunities to be able to implement something now, pay ourselves back later? I mean, I'm kind of feeling a desperation that I think the others are expressing really politely, but we're going into the end of the year and the slowest season, and people are already struggling, and that we're just going to lose businesses, and we're likely to lose those that were smaller and more vulnerable to start with. I mean, have we exhausted every option? I know our staff, kudos to everyone for not stopping, barely sleeping, taking on this enormous undertaking of workload, but are we missing anything?
Well, I'll chime in before staff does. I know that a lot of what, Sage, you and I were trying to do with the downtown activation package was a shot in the arm. And some of those things might move forward, but I would say some of the smaller leverage ones, I think the social districts is no longer moving forward just because there isn't enough consensus on council. So I do think that there's been a lot of effort from us and from staff to try and have this downtown activation package. Now that's just one part of our community and not the most directly impacted by the floods. But yeah, I'm curious to echo Sage your question towards staff. Are there other creative ways to get money out there?
Remember when we were on that meeting and then we were like, oh, there's this potential $5 million loan that we could get from the state. And we were like, whoa. And then we found out it's likely to be forgiven. You know, these little things that we would have no idea. I just don't, you know, and to Maggie's point, if we're not going to do those 4 things that we set out to do, are there 5 more behind it? And where does that come from? I'm not asking James to take this on clearly, whose plate is very full, but like, you know, as a collective, as the people that are focused on this particular sect of recovery, of economic recovery, should we be doing more?
Thanks, Sage. Kim, did you want to respond to that too, or did you have something different?
I don't know. Sage, were you looking for?
I'm just kind of pontificate. I feel the heaviness of this. I feel the businesses that are going to close around us because they have no choices. But, you know, like after COVID, there was money coming in and there was some, the TDA did that special $5 million and so on. And there was hope. So people were able to say, well, if I can make it to March, you know, but I don't think that we're even able to say that. And that I think is just a double whammy.
Yeah, I am hearing from folks like what happened with the fundraiser funds, like were those fully spent down? Everyone's asking, did you get the music fundraiser funds? No, who did? So folks are like, where's the rest of the money? Is it all, if it's not all spent down, can it be moved around Western North Carolina? Because it's not just our community that's suffering.
Can we make a plea as a council to those large organizations? Is there $10 million out there left that we could try and help? You know, is there anything? I know we're scraping at ideas here and we're a policy body, but I'm feeling the weight. And
So I would
I
support
will say
us.
there have been of the emergency funds. I was just on Dogwood Health Trust's annual meeting last week, and they, first of all, supporting business grants is not necessarily a direct hit with their mission, and they mobilized over 50 million of their own money and then also partners, and all of that money is out. So of the emergency funds that I'm aware of, between TDA, Chamber, Arts AVL, there was a worker, not a business grant, but like a worker grant relief fund, Dogwood's funds, the funds that Dogwood then gave to the community foundation, like all that money is out. So we've seen, I think the latest tally, upwards of 80 million in business grants already deployed into pockets. My understanding
big.
that our pot is the only one we're waiting on, for reasons that make sense, right? Because HUD, you know, it's federal money. We have to follow their rules. So I don't think that there's community partners that are sitting. I do think when I'm talking to our philanthropic partners that there's always continued fundraising happening. I know that there's some Truist resources, and they go into so many different buckets of funding. And I know that our philanthropy partners continue to fundraise with their partners to try and get more and more resources. Also, the early speculation is that another package could come from the state. That one might be 200 million. We don't know if business support would be part of that, but the next state package, which I think would be the 3rd or 4th state package. So there's still advocacy hope to be lobbying towards our state partners for support there as well. So that's the scan I've kind of been tallying.
So to complete the rest of the curiosity, I was at the Pride event at the Civic Center, and Patagonia was fundraising for the fund that runs through the TDA. That was so like where the math isn't mathing is what we call that, right?
What do you mean?
There are more recovery funds that are being raised. And so it would just help me to understand where all the resource mapping is happening. I do have some meetings coming up. But to add to one of the things that my colleague said earlier, I do see some wisdom in us diversifying our partners. And I just want to like let y'all know that I'm keeping in mind what happened with rental assistance early on and how we pushed so much in one direction and then spent months being like, oh my gosh, I wish we hadn't put it all in one space. Because if we had diversified our partnerships, we would have more levers of shared accountability. So I'm just keeping that in mind.
It's a great point, Kim, and all of that review and extra analyzation and more partners will mean more time too. Ugh. All right, I think we've held everybody up. Okay, let's keep moving.
Thanks for the update. It sounds like, James, you'll come back to us once you have kind of those partners and there's a formal process for council
At
to
the
weigh
latest.
in. Thanks for the timeline. Appreciate it. Without any other further questions, let's keep moving on to our next exciting agenda item number 4, which is the Burton Street Neighborhood Plan implementation.
Okay, hi, Planning, Economic Development, and Environment Committee members. My name is Steph Munson-Dahl. I'm the Planning and Urban Design Director, and I'm introducing this item. What we're talking about today is the implementation of the Burton Street Neighborhood Plan. And the purpose of this is to educate y'all in the community on the fact that we are working not only across departments, but in coordination with NCDOT and the community to coordinate the plan that was created in 2018. I do want to note that we have a lot of different neighborhood plans at the city. Probably if you include neighborhood plans on a page, over 30 of them. And I wanted to just clarify for folks, sometimes people don't really know what neighborhood plans are for. And I'd say that neighborhood plans are very important to us. They help share a vision of how communities want to grow in the future. It's not a to-do list for the city or for the community, but more a reference and a guide for when opportunities come up for us to make investments, new zoning changes, infrastructure improvements, programmatics changes. It can really help guide policy, and it's something that not only staff, but I know that council pays attention to. This plan is a bit unique. So while I mentioned that, plans are not to-do lists, they're guides and reference documents. The Burton Street Plan, as you will hear, was really created in response to a known mitigation that was needed based on I-26 construction. And so there was an acknowledgement and commitment, which is even bigger than an acknowledgement, by NCDOT as part of the environmental impact statement to be implementing this plan. And staff and prior councils really put an emphasis on making sure that when the time came and I-26 was moving forward into the design and construction phase, that we too would put more emphasis on implementation of this plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Haley Mahoney, who is an urban planner in our Planning and Urban Design Department, to talk you through a brief overview of how we're implementing.
Hey there, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Haley Mahoney with Planning and Urban Design, and today I'm going to be presenting this Burton Street Plan Implementation Update. So next slide, please. We're going to get kicked off here with looking at our key takeaways, and then we'll move on into some background. So the 2018 Burton Street Neighborhood Plan is unique from any other community plans within the city because its origin is tied to the environmental impact statement for the I-26 connector project. The plan was adopted by the city in September 2018 by resolution. There are 27 strategies identified in the 2018 plan. The city was identified as the lead for about half of these strategies, while the NCDOT was identified as the lead for the other half. Implementation efforts are occurring through a dedicated team of city and NCDOT staff working in coordination with the Burton Street neighborhood. And staff have created a detailed implementation report that can be updated at regular intervals. This report will help all parties involved be better informed and work collaboratively toward plan implementation. So looking at the plan background, the 2018 Burton Street Neighborhood Plan was born from a 2010 planning process to mitigate I-26 connector impacts. The initial effort led to a more comprehensive engagement and planning process led by NCDOT in partnership with the Burton Street Community Association. The purpose of the 2018 plan was to address potential impacts resulting from the I-26 connector project and current community concerns, and also to enhance the quality of life of the Burton Street neighborhood and to preserve the strong sense of community among Burton Street residents. While there was some groundwork that started in the years after adoption, the majority of implementation efforts started in late 2023 after NCDOT signed the Record of Decision. This was when the city started coordinating internal implementation efforts and began working more closely with NCDOT on their designated strategies. Then in summer of 2024, implementation efforts gained some new life when the plan implementation coordinator started regular attendance at the monthly Burton Street Community Association meetings regarding plan implementation. The 27 strategies of the 2018 plan are organized into two major themes: a livable built environment and a healthy community. These themes are further broken down into the 12 goals shown here, such as encouraging responsible growth and development, preserving and promoting Burton Street's history and culture, and increasing pedestrian safety, to name a couple. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to tell you next slide. First timer here. So what does implementation look like? Well, staff and NCDOT have been meeting bi-weekly to work through the strategies. In these meetings, we determine feasibility, funding, look at opportunities and mitigation options, and a bunch of other things. I have been working as the implementation coordinator. I started this role in June of 2024. For this position, I have been organizing and facilitating staff meetings, tracking progress, attending monthly Burton Street Community Association meetings, coordinating with the neighborhood to prioritize this work, and supporting staff to meet plan implementation goals. As mentioned, I have been attending the monthly BSCA meetings, but so have other city staff and NCDOT staff to provide strategy updates and seek feedback where applicable. Additionally, staff have been working on the creation of a detailed implementation report and supplemental report summary, which we'll discuss now. Next slide, please. So I'm excited to announce that staff have prepared a detailed implementation progress report for the 2018 Burton Street Neighborhood Plan. This report will be ready to kind of officially publish. It's still somewhat in draft form, fixing up some formatting stuff, but it'll be ready to publish by the end of this month. And this report provides a progress narrative along with a high-level status and next steps for each of the 27 strategies contained within the Burton Street Plan. The implementation report will serve two primary purposes. One, it provides the Burton Street neighborhood with a reference guide to help better understand, prioritize, and plan for present and future implementation efforts. Also, it gives city staff and external partners a quick reference point to understand the current status and progress for plan strategies, which helps to clarify and support future endeavors related to plan implementation. Staff plan to update the detailed implementation report at regular intervals, and will offer to present the updated versions to the BSCA as they become available. You can find a draft version of this report in its current state attached to the meeting documents for today. Supplemental to the detailed report described here is a report summary I created to provide a quick look at where the strategies stand. Next slide, please. So before we look at the report summary in more detail, I wanted to provide this quick snapshot of how the report summary is organized. Basically, I've broken down the strategies into 5 categories that represent a very high level status of where they stand. And we can discuss what these different buckets mean as we go through the following slides. Taking a quick look at this table, we can see there are a lot of strategies that are in progress, but let's dive a little deeper into that. Next slide, please. Looking to a deeper dive of what progress has been made so far, let's begin by discussing how these tables are formed. In the report summary, each high-level status category shows the strategy number, the leading agency for the strategy, which is either going to be the city or NCDOT, and the strategy's description as noted in the 2018 Burton Street Neighborhood Plan. Lastly, it also has a description of the strategy's overall kind of high-level status. We can see here that there are 3 strategies that have been deemed completed, one of these being 1.6.2 to install historic markers throughout the neighborhood. We see this strategy was noted as completed because these markers have been installed. Next, we'll move on to talking about ongoing and enforcement-based strategies. These strategies speak to the goals of our ongoing work rather than one-time effort. For example, looking at 1.2.4 to maintain trees and vegetated areas along public rights-of-way, this is part of the city's work and doesn't represent a one-time effort that can be marked completed. Or if we look at 2.4.2 to increase police presence and patrolling throughout the neighborhood, this is an ongoing enforcement strategy as the needs surrounding increased patrolling can change based on varying factors. So next we'll look at our in-progress strategies. These are the ones that staff are currently working on and are various stages of implementation. These are not ongoing or enforcement-based in nature, and many represent or contain specific projects. For example, looking at 1.4.2 regarding installation of sidewalk along Patton, we can see that it is currently in design with NCDOT. However, what we can't see by just looking at this more high-level summary report is that the sidewalk design has evolved over time to a multi-use path. So both reports serve kind of different purposes. And if you go to the detailed summary or detailed implementation report, you'll get those more put together narratives. So going to our next slide, we can see there's a bunch of strategies falling under this bucket of in progress. And that's really cool because it means a lot of work is underway. So looking ahead to our next slide, these are our future phase strategies that show what we have yet to explore in depth, either due to limited resources, capacity, or complexity. For example, looking at 2.1.2, it calls for the stabilization of tax rates by promoting affordability by design principles in new development. Staff need to figure out what role we can play in this strategy, knowing that the county sets property tax rates for the city. As a next phase of implementation, staff can explore what programs and opportunities may exist that speak to this strategy, and therefore additional research is required. This last category, strategies dependent on final NCDOT design plans or design-dependent strategies, are those that cannot move forward without getting to a certain point in the I-26 connector design and implementation process. For example, looking at 1.6.3 for a sound wall, this is only feasible if the sound wall gets built. The good news is looking at our report summary that there's a lot of work underway and there's also a lot of work that has been done and will continue to be done to maintain implementation progress. But where is it all going? Next slide, please. Well, we're going to continue working on the strategies that are in progress. Staff will provide guidance to the community on how to implement those future phase strategies. And we are committed to maintaining an open dialogue with the Burton Street community surrounding plan implementation. We're going to continue this work with NCDOT in the neighborhood through final design and construction and update the Burton Street plan implementation report and report summary at regular intervals. So looking back to our key takeaways, the 2018 Burton Street Neighborhood Plan is unique from any other community plans within the city because its origin is tied to the environmental impact statement for the I-26 connector project. The plan was adopted by the city in September of 2018 by resolution. There are 27 strategies identified in the 2018 plan, with the city identified as the lead for half and the NCDOT for the other half. Implementation efforts are occurring through a dedicated team of city and NCDOT staff working in coordination with the neighborhood. And staff have created a detailed implementation report that can be updated at regular intervals. And this report will help all parties involved be better informed and work collaboratively toward plan implementation. So for our last slide, I'd like to take some time to, I guess, give a shout out. I'm not sure if they made it on here or not. Did Miss Yvette and Miss Margaret?
They did not come, but Brendan Merithu from NCDOT is on the line.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll just give a shout out to Yvette Jives and Margaret Fuller. They are with the Burton Street Community Association leadership, and they have been great to work with since I've been brought on to this work. And was hoping they could be here today to say hello and speak for their association. But in lieu of that, we'll just say thank you, Yvette and Margaret, for all the work that you've done to help support me getting acclimated to this role. And Brendan, who has been equally as awesome to work with. I've enjoyed getting to know Brendan and working with him very much. He is on the line today, And so if there's any NCDOT specific questions, I will give him the opportunity to represent his organization. And thank you all for your time. Happy to take questions.
Kim?
Thank you so much, Haley. And thank you for the years of Burton Street leadership that have led up to this implementation plan. I wanted to elevate a letter that came from Burton Street Community Association in, it looks like, July of 2024. And this was before our general obligation bonds were on the ballot. There were 3 major buckets of requests that I didn't see named here. And a lot of them touch on the yet identified parts of where funding could be identified. So specifically for, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I can re-elevate to this committee if it's helpful and to staff. Transportation, sidewalks, touch on goal 2, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 8, 16, 35, and 39. Stormwater touches on goals 1, 16, and 25. Parking touches on 2, 5, 1, and 16. Parks and recreation, there's multiple recommendations, including the Smithfield Creek Greenway, touching on goals 1, 6, 8, 11, 15, 20, 31, 33, 35, and 39. And lastly, the affordable housing, home restoration and repairs, touching on goals 4, 2.17, 13, 14, 18, and 33. So I just wanted to make sure while we're doing this work on our implementation side that it's syncing up with the long history of advocacy and neighborhood planning. Otherwise, we might end up asking the neighborhood to duplicate work. So what does it look like for us to kind of synchronize those asks?
And can you repeat to me what the first document was that, like what the letter was?
Sure. There's a letter from the Burton Street Community Association. It was submitted to the full city council on July 22nd, 2024. And the reason I understood that they submitted it before the bonds is that they knew that funding was going to be an issue for some of the investments that they were asking us to make. And so they put it in front of the bond decision. And I wanted to make sure we're not asking the neighborhood to restate what they have already stated for funding strategies.
Yeah, I don't think so. I can say that there is a lot of work that is underway with the in progress strategies that speaks to those requests. Steph or Ashley, do you all know a little bit more about how the bond relates for this particular question?
As far as Ashley Hare, Transportation Director for the city. As far as the Smith Mill Creek Greenway goes, we are moving forward with that one. We are looking to get the feasibility study for it started hopefully in the spring. We're working on the scoping and RFQ for that study currently. So that's part of the bond funding. And also, as far as the sidewalks go, a big part of that is being paid for through DOT's efforts with the I-26 connector. So the implementation for that is also moving forward in terms of the consultant the DOT has on board to study network or sidewalk gaps. And we're trying to coordinate how that might look with the drainage needs for the neighborhood. Because if we're going to come in and fix sidewalks, we want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can in a cohesive and efficient way, looking at all of those asset needs.
Thank you for that. I know there are 2 homes that have significant stormwater damage after years of advocacy. And so we don't want to add to that problem when we could work to fix it.
Absolutely.
I will go ahead and recirculate the letter just so that it's named in this meeting's public record as well.
I would really appreciate that. Thank you. There's been so much work and years of things that have gone into this Burton Street plan implementation that I have not been able to track down quite everything. So I appreciate that. And let's see, the parking lot strategy is also underway. So hopefully we'll get some more parking at the community center here next spring.
All right. Thanks so much for your work, Haley. Really important. These community plans mean a lot to do. Neighborhood specific allows us to really have a good insight and collaborate effectively. So
Yeah, I appreciate you having me to share this work. It's exciting.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our agenda item 5, which is climate mitigation and the municipal climate action plan with Kira Bulan.
Good afternoon, friends. My name is Kira Bulan. I have the pleasure of serving as the Interim Sustainability Director here at the city. And I'm going to tag team this presentation today with Bridget Herring. She'll introduce herself a little later in the presentation. Next slide, Katie. Okay, in today's presentation, we're going to share some annual data and information about our steady state and ongoing progress towards Council's sustainability goals. We're going to put the second E in the PEDE today. We're going to highlight the many ways that mitigation activities can and will be addressed through all of the different recovery funding, excuse me, recovery funding sources, knowing that there are opportunities in all the sources, but in order for us to really tap into them, we're going to need to be layering those funding sources, multiple sources, often in the same project. And we're going to need to do that with strategy and dedicated leadership in the hopes of really being able to maximize the sustainability opportunities that are in hand with our recovery work. Next slide. We'll take us back in time a little bit. I know most of the folks on this call are probably familiar with the Municipal Climate Action Plan, but want to make sure that we're level setting for our folks listening at home. Our Municipal Climate Action Plan, or the MCAP, was adopted in 2023. And it's really our guiding document for sustainability across the organization and within the sustainability department. It incorporates multiple goals, resolutions, and plans that were previously adopted. It's organized with 22 high impact activities within 3 goals inside of the plan. In FY24, so previously, we created baselines and methodology to support the MCAP activity number 21, which is make climate and sustainability related data and progress towards the goals publicly accessible. So in today's presentation, and of course on our website, you'll see our second annual update on the progress for the MCAP 6 performance measures, as well as our work to link recovery related projects and organizational work back to the MCAP goals. There's more detail certainly in our annual report that was recently published, and on the city's website. Those links are in this presentation, or you can go to the sustainability webpage. Next slide.
Great. So I'm going to take over this one. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bridget Herring, and I serve as the recovery coordinator for the city. So as Kira mentioned, we're going to try to weave together some of our steady state and climate work with what's going on with recovery and making that connection. And so I'm primarily going to talk about 3 federal funding sources. Not that this is an exhaustive list of the recovery funding that we have available, but it's kind of the time sensitive funding that's available right in front of us today. And so those are the FEMA Public Assistance Program, which is applicable to city-owned assets that were damaged during Helene. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is available to all of North Carolina. It's a competitive grant program and has specific tiebacks to mitigating impacts and risks from future weather-related disasters, as well as the Community Development Block Grant for Disaster Recovery, or CDBG-DR, which James was talking about earlier. That also has, as well as the economic revitalization, it also has a bucket of funding for infrastructure. And we're going to be starting to talk about that. So each of these 3 funding sources, they all have mitigation embedded within them, even though it might show up a little differently. So I'm going to touch on some of those things today. And they all have very specific time sensitivity to them. So again, that's why we're really trying to maximize these opportunities. And as Kira mentioned, get the most out of each of them, which sometimes means sequencing, which sometimes means layering. So we'll walk through some of those with some tangible examples as we move through the presentation. Mitigation defined in this federal landscape is sustained action to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from natural hazards. And they all have some type of cost effectiveness calculation that goes along with that. So again, looking to try and maximize those opportunities that are embedded within each of them, even though the regulations within each are slightly different. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kira to talk about our MCAP goals.
Okay, back to our municipal climate action plan. So this is our goals slide. As you can see, the goals are quite broad. They touch on a lot of aspects of work that we're doing across the organization. And really, in order to be impactful in accomplishing or moving forward, progressing towards these goals, it really demands cross-departmental collaboration and ownership across different organizational departments and projects. We're going to go into a little more detail throughout the presentation with some representative steady state work that's kind of illustrates the work that's happening within those goals. Just as a quick reminder on this slide that the MCAP is focused on internal operations. Some of the activities nested under goal 3 cross over and touch on external programming. And the majority of that external facing work is done in close partnership with our key community partners and collaborators. Next slide. All right, digging into goal 1. So this is an area of work that's been a focus for the city, not only in the sustainability department, but public works, facilities, water, many other departments for quite a long time. We've been doing good work in this space, and in the post-saline recovery world, we know that there's more interest, there's more awareness, there's more resources available in a lot of ways, and we want to continue to be able to do this work impactfully going forward. I'm actually on the previous slide, Katie. I'm gonna dig into the performance measures in just a minute if you want to back up. Cool. Just going to speak a little bit overall on the goal, and then we'll dig in specifically to each of the specific performance measures. A couple examples of where we see steady state work previously over time, many in the before times, because we'll dig in more in the current and going forward recovery work. But we do have solar installations on 7 facilities. We have a sustainable fleet policy in pursuit of more fuel efficient vehicles, including charging infrastructure and make-ready work. We have stormwater infrastructure improvements through the Stormwater CIP project. And of course, not to be forgotten, the water system resiliency work, such as the enhancements to the North Fork Dam that were completed in 2021. So again, longstanding work happening within the organization to accomplish this goal. Now we can go to the next slide and talk specifically about some of the performance measures. So within the MCAP, we have just 6 performance measures. They're really intended for us to be able to try to measure the why does it really matter? What is the impact that we're hoping to see that benefits our community over time? So we have 2 performance measures per each goal. I'll speak to each of them individually. The first one on the left here is our carbon emission reduction goal. So carbon emissions has shown some improvement this fiscal year, a little better than we were doing last year. We're seeing the trend line going in the right direction. We're back on track for our 2% original annual reduction goal. However, as you can see, we're going to need more intervention to get to the updated 4%. There are some opportunities that exist as we're looking at our resilient power systems and some of the recovery work that we're hoping to be able to pursue. But the line graph really demonstrates that we've checked off some of the low-hanging fruit. This is a steady trickle of progress. And if we really want to make the deep dive to meet that long-term goal over time, we're going to need to prioritize larger scale investments and more innovation to be able to really swing that curve in a more aligned with our goals direction. Another reminder, when we're looking at our carbon as an organization, again, we've been looking at this for a while, and we know that additional investments, as we're adding new facilities or new investments over time, those come with carbon costs. And so, for example, when we're building the Broadview Public Safety Station, we have resilience opportunities there, and also we're adding a whole new building facility to our portfolio. So we have LEED policies, we have ways to do that smarter, to build our buildings with a lower carbon footprint, and also there's inherent carbon costs when we're doing building new buildings and adding new employees, which come with employee commutes. So kind of thinking about the complexity of the issue, there's a lot happening in our carbon footprint. However, policy and documented responsible process support ways that we do renovate or develop new infrastructure with sustainability and resilience at the forefront. And specifically with some of the projects that we hope to be able to pursue through recovery, we really can think about opportunities to invest in that renewable energy sources, resilient power systems, battery backup, and other opportunities to help offset and hopefully take a bigger bite out of our carbon reduction going forward. Looking at the right of our screen is our performance measure number 2. This captures city closures, which you might expect was way up. in fiscal year 2025. A lot of things were closed for a long period of time following Tropical Storm Helene. The other interesting thing to note on this slide is that this is data that we only started to capture as a result of the MCAP implementation. You see there's just 2 years here as compared to over a decade of carbon data capture that we've been tracking. This is an example of the ways that we continue to improve our tracking and reporting and monitoring over time. So the MCAP's kind of calling us to action and accountability, and we're looking forward to be able over time to continue to improve methodologies. We can run analysis of closures as we continue to develop our systems for tracking closures, reporting closures across the organization, alongside our ability to track and align with major weather events. And our hope is to be able to document the impact where we make resilience investments in our infrastructure over time. How is that reflected in actual facility and road closures over time? How are we able to track the alignment between investment and the way that we feel resilient and adaptive over time? These two performance measures next to each other, the last piece on this one, is also kind of a demonstration on how we have leaned in with our mitigation work over time. We're thinking about our carbon footprint. We're thinking about how we're being more efficient with our buildings, the best ways possible with renewable energy. And we're shifting in a landscape, even pre-Helene, but particularly post-Helene, to think about adaptation and understanding what the investments mean in terms of our ability to be able to get back online and to be prepared for what we know is coming. Next slide.
Great. So now I'm going to run through a couple of examples that we're working with right now in recovery to try and advance this goal to make city assets more resilient, sustainable, and efficient. So starting at the top right of your screen, this is a picture of actually the temporary systems that are out at North Fork to help with pre-treatment of the water out there. But we have submitted a hazard mitigation grant application to install a permanent pretreatment system out there. So that would help us be able to treat fluctuation and turbidity out at the reservoir at much higher levels, depending on what the weather might bring that might impact our source drinking water out there, as well as an alternative transmission line that doesn't follow the riverbed that would hopefully be able to sustain any type of landslides out at that area. So again, this is a competitive grant application, but an example of how we're trying to invest in increasing the resilience of one of our core city services. This is also an example, though, of how, as we make some of these investments, we'll see some of our carbon footprint impacted and grow, obviously, from the energy usage and intensity of running these systems. And so that's where we see sometimes investing in one aspect of our goal that kind of makes the other part a little harder, even though we know that this resilience is super important. So looking forward to hearing back about that grant application. And then if we go to the bottom of the screen, that's a picture of the solar panels at the transit station. That was the first installation of rooftop solar that we had at the city. We've also submitted applications for in the hazard grant mitigation program to upfit 12 of our what FEMA calls our critical facilities to better withstand natural hazards, right? So looking at like wind loads and other things of that nature to protect the building envelope and resilient. And as well as looking at what those power systems are and looking at what is the combination between generators, solar systems, and battery on site to be able to provide more resilient power in this situation. So again, that's a competitive application. We're waiting to see what it is. I kind of did a back of the napkin calculation for how much carbon. Metric tons doesn't mean much to anyone, but in scale, it could offset the potential of like the entire carbon emissions from City Hall, Parish Cherokee Center, the municipal building, and Fire Station 2, just to give you kind of a sense of what we're talking about in making that investment of avoided carbon emissions. And then finally, in the top left, you see a picture of the municipal building roof. So that roof was damaged in Helene, as well as the Thomas Wolfe roof. They're being replaced through the FEMA Public Assistance Program with thicker roofs that have some more durability and resilience to them, as well as white roofs, which have an opportunity to increase energy efficiency. So looking both at the resilience and the efficient and sustainable. That's kind of the trifecta project, which is exciting. This is also an example of where we might start to sequence and layer some of the funding. So the municipal roof replacement is being paid for with the FEMA public assistance. That is also one of the critical facilities in the hazard mitigation grant program. So if that comes to fruition, there's might be an ability to add solar and battery storage on top of that at that same facility. And then there might be a potential to look at potentially like CDBGDR to look at additional efficiency measures within the building of things that weren't impacted that could help with that resilience and reduce that carbon footprint. So that's kind of a real life example of how we might layer these things together over time to get the outcomes that we're looking for. I don't have an example of CDBGDR on this slide because we haven't rolled out that infrastructure bucket. But if you look in the CDBGDR action plan, it does talk about so what are the examples of some of the mitigation solutions. They mention things like microgrid capacity development, infrastructure and stormwater, emergency preparedness, structural reinforcement. So all of those things that we could potentially look at, how do they apply to city facilities to get the outcomes to advance these sustainability goals? So if we move on to the next slide, we can start diving into goal 2. So sustainability and climate priorities are embedded in city operations, participation, and decision making. So this is really thinking about what are the policies, what are the resources, what are the standard operating procedures that we can implement in the organization to institutionalize how sustainability informs and is consistently embedded in investments that we make within the city. So some examples of this are like how we use the climate justice data map in terms of looking at where we prioritized resource distribution and delivery. Is just one example of how we might do that. So we know that sustainability isn't going to be successful unless it's embedded in everything. If it's something on the side or something that's afterwards, it's not going to be as impactful. And so thinking about what are the types of performance measures that we can start to measure against, because it's kind of hard to think about how do you say this, many times this resource has been utilized or this policy has been implemented. So if we move to the next slide, one of the performance measures that we worked on for this was how much are we investing in sustainability? And so we really focused on the capital improvement program. And what we want to see, which is this trend line going up, which is more money being invested in sustainability. As Kira mentioned earlier in the presentation, some of these performance measures were kind of brand new with the adoption of the MCAP. So we really had to sit down and think about what is the methodology? How do we track this information over time? And what we decided is to look at total project costs. So this doesn't mean that every single penny of this went specifically to a sustainability measure, but the project in total had sustainability embedded in it in some way. And so that's what we're seeing on the left side of the screen. And that's specific to our capital improvement program. Doesn't include, it's not comprehensive of our entire budget and our operating costs as well, and some of our other enterprise funds. But just to give you a flavor of how we're starting to think, are we making progress? Are we making success? On the right side of your screen, this kind of breaks down some of the money that we're seeing coming in specific to mitigation embedded in those 3 funding sources that I was talking about. So the FEMA Public Assistance Program, as I mentioned, they all have mitigation embedded within them. And kind of the base for a repair project is that FEMA will take the entire project cost and pencil out what's 15% of that to go towards mitigation measures. So right now, our current estimate of how much total we are receiving in mitigation funding through public assistance is the $2 million. Now, during the August 26 Policy, Finance, and Infrastructure Council work session, we showed you the different phases of a FEMA public assistance project. there's a phase 3 that talks about scope and cost, where we negotiate with FEMA on like what's the scope of the project, what's considered damaged, and how much do we think that's going to cost. So we're trying to increase that number as much as possible to increase then the additional mitigation funding that'll be on top of that. So not a lot of our projects are through that phase. And as they go through that, this number will increase. And so we can come back and report on what type of funding that is and what type of mitigation measures we're able to do with that funding. Moving into the hazard mitigation grant program, as I mentioned, this is a competitive funding source. So we don't have any feedback from FEMA or the state on which of these applications are going to be awarded yet, but we have submitted over 400 million. And those are projects, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, like the investments in our water resilient production, in secondary power, the solar and storage that we're talking about at 12 critical facilities, that's all wrapped up into that grant program. So competitive, it's also lengthy. It could take 1 to 2 years before we hear back from FEMA on which applications they support. So we have to practice our patience in that space, but an exciting opportunity that we're hoping to see come to fruition in our community. And then finally for CDBG-DR, the universal notice mentions that there's 31.5 million that's supposed to be spent on mitigation, and that'll be woven throughout. So as we mentioned, there are different buckets: economic revitalization, infrastructure, housing. Mitigation measures will be woven throughout those pieces. And so as that money starts to be allocated and spent, we'll be able to report back on how that shows up in the investment. So that could be investment both in city assets as well as in external things like housing stock that's coming online. So that's an exciting opportunity. And with that, I think we'll move to the next slide and Kira can wrap up goal 2.
All right, so looking at performance measure number 4, here we're looking at our organizational work plan projects. So these are the agreed upon projects that have cross-departmental collaboration, likely usually larger impact because they are larger scale projects and require investment of resources and capacity from across the organization. We're looking at these to determine if the project team is using tools and resources meaningfully to consider sustainability opportunities. So the OWP, the organizational work plan projects, together with the capital improvement projects and the previous performance measure, it's a way, like Bridget said, to snapshot while looking at the big dollar, large impact projects. So we're looking for trend lines on how are we doing internally using the tools and resources that we have available. You'll note that there are fewer organizational work plan projects overall in FY25 than there were in FY24, as we reorganized the organizational work plan post-storm to make way for recovery projects. But we maintained a positive trend line in terms of percentages of projects that are using this consideration, using the tools of a sustainability lens to implement and plan their projects. While recognizing that not all projects can have specific sustainability features, for example, there's sometimes internal policy development or other projects that may not be determined relevant. We are continuing to operate with the expectation that project managers consider and use tools that are available, tap into technical assistance from us or from outside resources that we're able to connect with, and consider meaningfully opportunities with time to implement the sustainability options. So early consideration, consultation, technical advice when relevant, and then documenting baselines and collaborating on monitoring and progress, right? We are in some ways a team of 2 to 3, but also when we think about the sustainability department, we really operate as a team across the organization. So in order to even be documenting what we need to collect information and data on these performance measures, we're really relying on our colleagues across departments. On the right side of this slide is some examples of the current FY26 organizational work plan. Here's some projects that we know are going to have meaningful sustainability considerations, work that's already underway, just as a snapshot for what we expect to see moving forward. Next slide. We're going to talk a little about goal 3 soon. There she is. Goal 3 connects some of our internal facing sustainability and climate initiatives with projects and programs that more directly touch our residents. So obviously everything we do as a city is impactful citywide, and also there are some projects that are, they resonate more directly with residents in their daily lives. Many of these activities are done in collaboration, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, close collaboration with our community partners. A couple examples of current projects are home energy efficiency and electrification programming in partnership, both with the city, the county, and with the state, and Electrify Asheville Buncombe, supporting some of our homes in here, state rebate implementation in the area. We have our tree protection ordinance. We have Asheville Edibles programming, so community gardens and edible parks, workshops, work days, plantings in partnership with Bountiful Cities, with Asheville Greenworks, with Southside Community Farm, and others. And then within our Parks and Recreation Department, our partnerships and collaboration on pollinator habitat with Bee City and with our own staff internally. Next slide. Home stretch. These are our last two performance metrics on goal 3. Performance metrics number 5, this is looking at tree stuff. So you can see on the left, we're tracking 3 trend lines: trees preserved, planted, and fee in lieu paid, since we've been tracking since July 2021. A notable side note, as we're talking about trees, 1, trees preserved or planted is equal to approximately 25 McCormick fields. So we are saving some trees through the tree protection ordinance. Also, we know that people are really excited / anxious to see our post-Helene canopy data, and progress is being made as the Urban Forest Master Plan is back underway post-Helene, and we expect to be able to share post-Helene official canopy data early next summer. The team is working hard on that. They're under contract. There are some complications due to some very specific satellite imagery needs, but it is happening. And the good news is that city staff will be trained for ongoing canopy assessments using that imagery going forward. So we're excited about that. And on the right side, the final performance measure here, this documents the total number of edible and pollinator sites that are included on our Asheville Edibles map. Certainly not an exhaustive list of personal production gardens or edible plants that people are growing throughout the city, but really an opportunity as we document and inspire increased activity on city-owned properties, such as our 3 edible parks, collaboration and partnership for workshops and programming happening in our city-owned property. Similar on this performance measure number 6, similar to the data capture and display that we saw earlier in goal 2, this is an example of how information sharing priorities that have emerged since the MCAP have enhanced what we're collecting, what we're documenting. We only have data for 2 years of the sites included in this map. And as we start to document this baseline last year in FY24, looking forward to gathering more annual information and having that inform some of the ways that we extend our resources and direct our partnership and collaborations across the city. Next goal.
So in terms of recovery, in terms of goal 3 as well, and how we support our community, we know that we have limitations on what we can require, what we can regulate in this space. And so there's a lot to do with partnership here. In some space, we're the lead. In some spaces, we're just supporting and trying to help provide these resources. So on the left-hand side of the screen is kind of more where we are in a leadership space, and the right-hand side of the screen is more where we're in a support role and we're partnering with our partners. So I think there's some examples through the CDBG-DR. James didn't talk about it earlier. He talked about small business support, but there's also an allocation in there for flooded commercial districts. And I think we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but that can look in a lot of different ways to help support those business districts be more resilient and potentially more efficient as they look to rebuild and shore up some of those spaces and some of the infrastructure that exists in that space. Underneath that is just a front image from our comprehensive plan. And I put this on here because we had submitted an HMGP application to update the UDO, specifically looking at our natural hazards and how we can be more resilient in that. And that is our biggest policy mechanism in thinking about how our external built environment looks and feels and can be more resilient to future disasters. So those are where we're in more of a leadership role. On the right-hand side is more where we're in a support role. So Renew NC is the state's home repair reconstruction program that people are available to apply for now. That's a program that they're running and that we're supporting through our housing CDBG-DR allocation amount. And then underneath that Envision Buncombe is the long-term recovery plan that I know you also heard about at your August 26th Policy, Finance, and Infrastructure work session, where the county is leading this county-wide initiative to think about what are we prioritizing, what do we want to see to be successful in recovery over a longer period of time. So there was some community engagement on that. That is wrapping, and I believe Chris Collins is going to be bringing that back to PFI at one of the future meetings. So another example where we're looking at other municipalities, trying to understand what is our interconnectedness within the county and how are we going to move forward both as our own entity and in collaboration with others in this space. So that's really what we have to share with you today. So the next slide is just a recap of the key takeaways, which is that we're seeing incremental but steady investment in progress on council sustainability goals, as well as trying to see what are the mitigation opportunities that we have in recovery, and recognizing that while there's some limitations, that we're really trying to figure out what layering funding sources, combining funding sources can look like to get the outcomes that we're looking for. But that is going to be a time intensive process. So with that, I think we're open to taking any questions and are particularly interested in hearing from you all. What's the best way to lift this information up, both in terms of when you're hearing these presentations in other places with the project specific, so we're not being repetitive, and what's helpful to help bring people along to see this as it's embedded in the work.
Thanks, everybody. Phew, that's such a broad spectrum of things that we really are integrating sustainability into so many different areas of departmental work. And that's really the vision. So very excited to see all of it. Hard to even wrap my head around all of it. I had two questions. One, I don't think I saw any updates towards our 100% renewable energy policy that council signed a resolution saying that we'd have 100% renewable energy for municipal operations by 2030. So I'd love to see the data on our progress towards that. And then curious, I was super excited to see that we've applied to HMGP for a bunch of solar and resilience projects, and curious like what they add up to, either in our GHG reduction or in our 100% RE project, 100% RE goal, because I want to make sure that while these projects are on the table, we are applying for as much as possible to reach the stated council goals.
Yeah, we can definitely get back to you with a more detailed update on progress towards the 100% renewable energy goal. We'll bring that to a future meeting. And it is challenging, as Bridget alluded to several times, because of the competitive nature of the HMGP, where we're seeing so many opportunities to install renewables, for us to really be able to say what the impact is going to be. So if we are able to do one and not 12 or all 12, obviously, the impact is going to be significantly different. So as we continue to make progress with those applications and understand how we can turn them into actual projects, we will be reporting on that.
Yeah, I guess I mean, like, if we're submitting an application, we must have some sense of like, it would be 40 kilowatts. So my question is, even knowing that we won't necessarily get all of them, the package that we're pursuing, what type of dent does it make in our either GHG reduction goals or our 100% RE goal? Understanding we might not get all of them, but what I'm trying to, really where I'm going is I am so thankful to see the chart, the graph of our greenhouse gas emissions performance. So it looks like we haven't met our stated policy goal since 2019. And that's honestly kind of alarming to me. That's a long-standing council target. And I understand that it's our role as council to fund and advocate for that you all don't make up the budget. That's really, to me, I look to my peers and say, whew, guys, we're really missing our mark on this. And so as I see a bunch of opportunity for external resources, I'm like, great. If we do this, if we get all the packages in HMGP, do we get back on track with our policy targets or not? Is it just a sliver towards it? And I'm curious for the data towards that. And then similar with 100% RE goal, we're supposed to be at 100% RE within 5 years, less than 5 years, 4 years. Are we like 80% of the way there? Are we 4% of the way there? So that's important because council were the people who said these are our policy goals, and we need to put our money where our mouth is when we're setting our budgets. And I'm curious. I'd like to see that. And I know that you all are working within the constraints, but so that's where some of my inquiries are of like, are we leveraging the current federal dollars enough to reach these goals? Or do we need to be advocating more as your leadership team to stay on track with our goals?
Yeah, so we can definitely get you how much, if we implemented all those projects today, it would impact like our carbon reduction goal as of now. And just remember that that's avoided carbon going forward. So that's the nice thing about those investments. And we can also say how much of a percentage of it for renewables for like this year. As a reminder on that goal, it doesn't have a baseline. So it's like hard to say we're this way here because it fluctuates with our consumption. So just to like caveat that, but happy to follow up with that information.
You all, I have a 3 o'clock meeting and I need to get going. I don't have any additional comments or anything other than that was just a lot of information. So I had to absorb it, after like 5 hours of lots of information. So I'm still just absorbing, and I appreciate all of your hard work.
Thanks. All right, then let's, Kim, unless you had your hand up lingering, or should we move
I
on?
still do have my hand up for this. Yes, thank you. So I still have the same concern. Forgive me for using the 100% renewable energy of people power to walk up this hill to my next meeting. I still have the same concern that I did during our conversation about plastic reduction back in maybe early 2024, late 2023, is that we're asking y'all to do more with not enough staff. I'm really concerned about the staff capacity. And the question back then was like, because we're asking you to do more, what kind of budget or staff would you need to do it? And the answer was none. But I'm thinking right now, it would have been so great if we had brought more staff on then to help with the load now, because now we need even more work. And I just don't see us being able to ask more of the same very small department, but I am going to ask for more. So I'm acknowledging that we hopefully will see a budget ask for the sustainability department. I am so grateful for the information on renewable energy and solar backup strategies. I think there's an opportunity to communicate with the public the multi-solving of these community resources during power outages. And I'm trying to understand where the uptrend in the net emissions is coming from. It sounded like it was adding another building, but is that the only major factor?
I mean, it's not just buildings, like it's everything that's growing, right? Like the Burton Street example, we are implementing the neighborhood plan. We added lights to light up the sport court out there, right? Like we're seeing that happen across our portfolio. So I think that's just like one example of how our footprint can grow, and that additional investment is needed to offset the growth as well as get the reduction. So as we're seeing the stringency, right, because we set a baseline, so our emissions have been growing, we have to offset the growth and reduce from what we're doing. And so that's
sense. But I think I would just back up Councilmember Ullman's request to understand the kilowatt hours that we need
And in the future, because we're talking about these anti-displacement strategies and maybe using that as a way to further assess land use, I would say, once again, at the same time, we could bring on like what's the impact to our goals and sustainability when new projects come on board. Are we going to anticipate a major change in kilowatt hours? How does that help us meet our goals? Additionally, can you help me understand now, or maybe it's a future conversation, where the hazard mitigation grant funds, if we got all those projects done, where that would put us in our emission reduction goal?
You
Yeah, I
mean
think that's similar to what I was asking, and I think staff said that they could come loop back to us with some of that information, because I think I see your brain and my brain tracking in similar directions of like, yes, awesome, we're doing work, and how does the effort and the resources match our goals yet?
And I don't want us to be in the, like you said, I don't want us to be in the same position of being like, we're spending so much time tracking that we're not doing, but I think it helps to tell the story about why we need more staff.
Yeah.
And I don't hear the similar hiring urgency that I do from like the CDBGDR, but it seems like we have it. And then my last question was, where does transit intersect? Because I know you were mentioning it's like organization-wide strategies, but our operational analysis right now, the way I'm watching it unfold, is the problem is not if we need frequency or we need coverage, it's that we need more funding for transit, because we're going to pit two groups against each other when we need mass transit and we need it often. So I'm just wondering where the sustainability touches on transit and where it helps us meet our goals.
So I would say in terms of the goals that we set when we talked about today, we look at the carbon emissions that come from our transit fleet. And so the more efficient those buses are, that decreases our carbon footprint. We also track emissions from our employee commute. And so the city does provide free bus passes to everyone, but as that network is able to efficiently move people to their jobs, including city employees, that's also a potential overlap too.
Oh, I would love to see more information on that, because if we don't pay living wages to our staff based on the cost of housing, they have to live farther away. So understanding how many of our staff or what percentage of our staff have longer commutes would be helpful.
Thanks, y'all, for bringing us this information. I think it's always that thread of doing the work and tracking the work, but for us to be to lead, to get the resources we need for our stated policy goals, this type of data is really, really important. So really appreciate it. Okay, I basically heard that both my colleagues need to leave at the top of the hour. So I'm going to make a facilitator decision and hope my teammates are okay that we are going to ask to review item number 6 next month. And sorry, staff who prepared this month, so that we can still have time to do public comment. So Katie, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do. Just
Great.
1 moment, please.
Thanks.
Caller ending in 5202. Your line is now open and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. This is Rachel Cohen with Sunrise Movement WNC. And I want to say thank you to the entire committee. And thank you to the Sustainability Department for providing this update. This is a great first step in the community understanding what all is going on with sustainability work, and also being able to dig into, are we doing the right things? Are we doing enough of them? And where is it getting us? So thank you again. We recognize the hard work that everyone's been doing, juggling general recovery duties as well as sustainability work. And just wanted to point to a few things that we probably all need to agree on these kind of big picture questions of what needs to be done, what are we doing enough? It's not what are the barriers to doing enough and how might we overcome them. I wanted to point out a couple of specific ways that I feel we can't really get to the answers to those questions with the information provided. And this really echoes a lot of to what Maggie and Kim were speaking of. But I'll give some different examples since they already touched on some. So in the annual sustainability report, we see progress represented in those little circles that are either not filled in at all, filled in halfway, or filled in completely. That's not really a detailed way for the community to understand actually like what the work is that's going on. For context, those filled in circles were the same in this year's sustainability report as last year's. Now, I assume, and I know work has been done from last year to this year. If that's not represented in the circles, then that's probably not a good way to represent progress. So that's just a comment. I do want to go back to the carbon emissions graph that both Maggie and Kim had touched on. That's super helpful, and it is really important information for us to see year over year what the progress has been. Just echoing that it looks like we haven't made progress in 2018 on those emissions reduction goals. Yikes. That's something that I think should be something that we all understand so that we can decide what to do about that. So I'm excited to have that information now and excited to advocate for overcoming whichever barriers there are to actually continue and decrease emissions, whether those are technical barriers, financial barriers, et cetera. And finally, on the what needs to be done question, I know I've voiced this to several folks in the past, but the Municipal Climate Action Plan, we understand that focuses on the government's own footprint, but obviously the city government is a leader for the entire community and not just its own operation. And so the goal 3 for supporting sustainability and resilience in the broader community, would love to have more in-depth conversations at some point about how to make those activities big enough to actually make an impact, even if the city doesn't have complete
Sorry, caller,
control
your
over it.
time is up. Madam Chair, that was our one and only caller.
Okay. Sorry to have cut you off, but look forward. Hopefully you can email us the rest of those comments and would love to chat further. I know we've been talking together about this. So again, sorry for running a little bit late. I'll work on tightening our agendas for the future. There's just so much good work happening, and it's really important for us to get a lens of that as well as the data metrics. And again, sorry, we'll have to punt the final agenda item towards next month. But with that, I will I don't think we even need a motion to adjourn. I'll just say we are going to wrap up this meeting. Thanks, everybody.